Hey, welcome back. Last formalized part of this chapter and unit, actually, because unit 3 is only chapter 4. So, important ideas. Inference. If you have a random sample, it allows you to generalize to a whole population. Just picking people at randomly for your survey or your study or your experiment will allow you to say that what you find applies to the entire population. So that's why random samples are important. If you're looking at random assignments allows us to make conclusions about, cause and effect. All right, so if you did a random assignment saying you do this, 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 so basically you're making it into an experiment, that allows you to establish that cause and effect relationship for whomever your sample ends up allowing, okay? And we kind of covered that all in the previous thing. The one that we didn't cover necessarily, but we'll cover down here in the check for your understanding, is data ethics. And this is not necessarily always a major part of the AP test, but it's still good to talk about because otherwise you can get yourself into some sticky situations. There are 3 parts of data ethics that our curriculum covers. The first one is, I'm getting ahead of myself. The first one is institutional review boards, okay? When you're doing a study, there should be an outside group that takes a look at your study and helps you kind of double check that what you're doing is good. So are the people, if it's revolving people or animals, are those being taken care of, or is there a reason why things are going on? You know, if it's animals, are the reasons why you're doing what you're doing. They make sure that confidentiality, which we'll talk about in a second, is taken care of and all of that. So it's just a second set of eyes to double check that everything's going on. They usually will, if you needed to, they may ask to have changes made, and they may also kind of, they could potentially say, sorry, you can't do that, okay? And, going against the Institutional Review Board is probably a lot of what a lot of good, villains in movies actually go do. 2, informed consent. You have to tell if there's people in your group what the nature of your study is going to be about, the purpose of your study, and if there's any risks for them. So for example, if you're going off and doing a study about a new medicine, you might say, okay, we're going to study this because we're trying to lower cholesterol, because we're trying to find something more effective with those side effects. However, since you're getting a new experimental medicine, while seems like we're not having anything, you may go through side effects, and there's reasons, you may have an adverse effect to it, that type of thing. And the last thing is confidential. The thing to remember about confidential, it does not necessarily mean anonymous. Oftentimes, studies are confidential. Sometimes they're anonymous, but then that means they can't do any follow-up with you. So confidential means that you're usually assigned a number, your number and your name are separated, and your contact information. And so then that way, if they need to get a hold of you, you can. But what they are saying is they're not going to say what the participants said, what your results were, or anything like that. Okay? So those are the 3 things that you need to do. And as I said, we'll talk about here. Hit pause for a second, run through the questions, and we'll see you in about, 10 minutes. Hey, welcome back. So this first question, athletes, obviously have sports injuries. And so the question is, if we remove athletes right away, does it help with their recovery? So researchers recruited 95 athletes seeking care for sports-related concussions at a medical clinic and followed their progress. Researchers found statistically significant evidence, that was a conversation yesterday, that athletes who were removed from play immediately recovered faster or more quickly than athletes who continued to play with their concussion. So the question then becomes, what conclusions can we draw from this study? First of all, remember, we need the 2 randoms, okay? Do we have a random sample? We recruited 95 athletes seeking care. Okay, so that means that that's not a random sample. Random sample. Then the other question is, do we have random assignment? No, because it was just kind of like, where is it? Athletes who were removed. So that means that we have no random assignment. So because of those reasons, we know that we can't generalize it to the athletes' population in general, and we can't say there's cause and effect. we can just say that there's an inference for those athletes. So in this case, I wrote it down as only that the only thing that conclusion you can draw is that the athletes in the study recovered more quickly if they were removed. Okay, there's no inference because there's not a random sample, and there's no cause and effect because there's no random assignment. And I forgot to close my parentheses. My apologies. Oh, something in my eye. Would it be ethical to conduct this experiment to answer this question? So if you were going to conduct an experiment, obviously these are the two things that you'd want to do. Random sample, not a big deal, right? You can randomly find athletes who have been injured. However, can you do random assignment? Can you say, okay, if you get injured and you have you're in a concussion protocol, potentially in a concussion protocol, we're going to randomly say if you play or not. Yeah, that's not really ethical, okay? Because you can't really tell them, hey, yeah, you can go ahead and do more, all right? Another question. Can eating nuts during pregnancy help children avoid nut allergies? Researchers studied 8,000 children who were born in the early 1990s to mothers who ate a lot, who were part of the Nurses' Health Study. Children whose mothers ate the most nuts during pregnancy, which was at least 5 times a week, were significantly less likely to develop nut allergies than children of mothers who ate nuts, the least amount of nuts, which at that point was less than once a month. So does this study show that eating nuts causes pregnancy, causes reduced risk? Well, ask yourself again. Causation, remember, is going to be random assignment. Were the mothers randomly assigned to eat the amount of nuts they're going to eat? No, it wasn't, okay? There's no random assignment. We can't do it. All right. Now the question is, would it be ethical to conduct an experiment to answer this question? Explain. This is a little goofy, and I've had students argue this with me, so this is the only reason why I'm bringing it up. Generally, I would say no, because the babies in the study who are born can't give you, are the ones getting the treatment because you're trying to see if they're the ones who are exposed to peanuts in utero or not, and they can't have informed consent. I did have some students in the past, usually at least one or two a year, who say, well, wait a second. My body, my choice, and it brings up that whole abortion thing back and forth. So that, again, I'm just mentioning it because it may come up in class if you were doing it that way. If you're a teacher who's watching this, just keep that in the back of your head. But generally, this is one of those things where you don't want to go necessarily do something that can harm people. And so since the babies are being born, you don't want to harm them. And so they're going to be people eventually at whosever definition you want to use and go from there. So on that note, we are now done with Chapter 4. So good luck if you're having a quiz, good luck on your test. And we thank you so much for checking in with us. And we'll see you for probability in Chapter 5. Talk to you soon.